It was just another quiet afternoon at a McDonald's, the kind of place you'd expect to be full of the usual lunchtime chatter and the sound of fryers sizzling. Keanu Reeves, however, wasn't there for anything out of the ordinary. After a long day on set, he'd found this small, cozy corner of the fast food chain to escape the chaos, to be just another guy getting a quick bite to eat, away from the spotlight. Keanu wasn't looking for anything special, just a simple meal. A burger, fries, and a Coke. He sat by the window, looking out at the busy street, trying to enjoy a rare moment of peace. The hustle of the world outside seemed miles away, and for once he didn't have to be Keanu Reeves. In this moment, he was just a guy who had a burger in front of him and the quiet of the afternoon, but nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. The door to the McDonald's opened, and in walked a family, just another mom and her young son, probably no older than 6. The mom, Sarah, was busy scanning the menu, paying little attention to anyone else, but her son Max wasn't like the other kids. While the other children were running around or chattering, Max walked quietly by her side, his gaze fixed straight. A head focused on something, or rather someone. Keanu felt it before he saw the boy. That feeling of being watched. He didn't think much of it at first, but as Max's eyes lingered on him, Keanu couldn't shake the odd sensation that something was different. Max didn't act like most kids. He wasn't excited or rowdy. Instead, he just stared. And Keanu, although used to the occasional stare from fans, couldn't ignore the intensity of this one. For a moment, Keanu wondered if it was just his imagination. Maybe it was nothing. But then the boy Max started walking toward him, slowly, deliberately. "Hey, buddy," Keanu smiled, trying to be friendly, offering the boy a warm, unassuming glance. Max didn't say anything at first. He just stared at him. Keanu raised an eyebrow, a little unsure of what was going on. Maybe he was just being shy, but when Max got close enough to be within arm's reach, the boy reached up and gently tapped Keanu on the shoulder. Keanu looked down at him. "Hey there," he said, trying to ease the tension. "Can I help you with something?" Max didn't respond right away. Instead, he leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Chew." "Keanu, I need to tell you something," Max said, his words clear yet somehow unsettling. Keanu blinked, caught off guard. Okay. What is it, kid?" Max's eyes locked onto his, as if seeing through him, and in that instant, everything seemed to stop. The noise of the restaurant faded into the background, and all Keanu could hear was the quiet, steady breath of the boy. And then, Max whispered something that would change everything. "You're going to die today." Keanu froze. His heart skipped. A beat, and a cold shiver ran down his spine. The world around him seemed to slow down. The boy's words hung in the air, heavy, impossible. What did he just say? Keanu felt the color drain from his face. The casual, friendly atmosphere he had just been enjoying shattered in an instant. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his cup of Coke, trying to steady himself, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Max, however, wasn't acting like anything was wrong. He just stood there, staring at him with wide eyes, as though waiting for something, an acknowledgement, a response, or perhaps even a reaction. Keanu looked down at the boy, trying to process what had just been said. His mind raced, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the eerie feeling that something was terribly wrong. He could barely bring himself to speak. I think you should go back to your mom, buddy," Keanu said, his voice shaking more than he intended. Max didn't argue. He didn't say anything else. He simply turned and walked back to his mother, who was still occupied with the menu. She didn't seem to notice the strange interaction that had just occurred. The boy had spoken his cryptic words and then gone, back to his meal like nothing was out of the ordinary. But for Keanu, everything had just changed. He couldn't understand why, but the words kept echoing in his mind. "You're going to die today." He couldn't let them go. The feeling of dread continued to creep up on him, intensifying with each passing second. Without thinking, Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His fingers hovered over the screen as his mind raced. It didn't make sense. He didn't believe in signs or warnings or anything like that, But there was something in Max's voice, something in the way he looked at Keanu, that made him uneasy. Something deep inside Keanu told him he needed to take action, and then with a deep breath he dialed 911. This wasn't just a kid saying something odd. This felt real. And for the first time in a long while, Keanu was genuinely afraid. The operator answered the phone, and Keanu, still shaky, spoke in a rushed voice. "I need help. Something's wrong. His voice faltered. "I don't know what's happening, but I think I'm in danger." The call had just begun, and yet Keanu already knew that everything was about to change. Keanu Reeves wasn't just a famous actor. He was a man of mystery in many ways. On screen, he had portrayed a variety of iconic roles, from the stoic, brooding Neo in The Matrix to the deadly, calculating John Wick. But off-screen, Keanu had always been known as something else, a humble, quiet soul who valued simplicity over fame. It was this very simplicity that had brought him to this McDonald's today. After weeks of intense work on a film set, he was craving something ordinary, something that could take him away from the world of flashing cameras and constant attention. Keanu had always preferred being a regular guy, just blending in wherever he could. This afternoon, sitting alone at a corner table, he was exactly that, just another person at a fast food restaurant. Despite his global recognition, Keanu had an aversion to attention. He was a man who had learned to keep his personal life hidden, even while the world around him was obsessed with his every move. And so, as he casually unwrapped his burger and took a sip from his cup, he was perfectly content with his quiet lunch. He never expected that it would take a strange turn. The family that entered the McDonald's wasn't extraordinary. They looked like a typical mother and child enjoying a moment of their own. The woman, Sarah, was in her 30s, her brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a simple grey sweater and jeans. She appeared to be in her own world, scanning the menu with a look of mild concentration. Her son, Max, however, stood out. Max wasn't like most kids. He was quiet, too, quiet, and his eyes seemed to hold something beyond his years. At first, Keanu didn't think much of it. Kids sometimes stared, especially when they recognized someone famous. But Max's gaze was different. There was an intensity behind his eyes that Keanu couldn't shake, as if the boy was studying him, as if there was something only the boy could see. Sarah ordered for them both, but Max didn't seem to notice. His attention was still fixed on Keanu. The child's eyes never wavered as they followed Keanu's every movement, making the actor feel uncomfortable for the first time in a long while. Keanu tried not to acknowledge it, tried to focus on his meal. But the feeling grew stronger as the boy slowly moved toward him. As Max approached, Keanu didn't know what to expect. He didn't know whether the boy wanted an autograph or was just curious about seeing a celebrity in person. It was a normal occurrence for Keanu, but there was something different about this interaction, something off. And then came the moment that would change everything. Max, without any sign of hesitation or shyness, walked up to Keanu's table. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. The boy wasn't smiling, wasn't speaking. He simply stood there looking up at him, a soft, almost unreadable expression on his face. Keanu, feeling the weight of the stare, cleared his throat. "Hey there, buddy. What's up?" Max didn't speak at first. Instead, he just looked at Keanu as if he were studying him closely. Keanu noticed the way the child's eyes flicked back and forth, not looking at him in a way that a child might look at a stranger, but rather with a knowing, deliberate gaze. It was unnerving, to say the least. Then Max slowly raised his hand, as if asking for permission, and tapped Keanu gently on the shoulder. Keanu smiled, thinking the boy might be asking for something simple, a picture maybe. "Yeah, buddy," and that was when the words came, quiet, calm, but with a chilling certainty. Keanu, I need to tell you something." Keanu was taken aback. The tone was unlike anything he expected. The words were simple, but there was an urgency to them, as if the boy needed to share something vitally important. "What's going on, little guy?" Keanu asked, trying to remain calm, trying to mask the unease creeping up inside him. But Max didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned in closer, his breath warm against Keanu's ear, and whispered something that would haunt the actor for days to come. "You're going to die today." For a moment, everything stopped. Time seemed to freeze around Keanu, and the burger in his hand felt suddenly too heavy. His heart raced as a cold chill ran down his spine. He felt the color drain from his face. Max, the little boy with wide, innocent eyes, had just spoken words that would haunt him forever. Keanu's mind struggled to process what had just happened. He wanted to laugh it off, to tell himself that it was just some bizarre child's fantasy. But something in the boy's voice, the certainty, the lack of emotion, made the words feel too real, too ominous. He glanced around the McDonald's, but no one else seemed to notice. The other patrons were preoccupied with their own meals, their conversations, their lives. No one could have possibly understood the weight of what had just been said. Max simply stood there staring at him with a calm, almost unreadable expression. The boy didn't flinch, didn't show any sign of fear or excitement, as though he were delivering a simple fact. Keanu's pulse quickened. The words, "You're going to die today," echoed in his head. He tried to shake them off, to dismiss them as nonsense, but deep down he couldn't. His stomach churned, and the burger in his hand suddenly felt like an alien object. He needed to do something. Anything. "I think you should go back to your mom, buddy," Keanu said, his voice sounding hollow even to his own ears. His hand gripped the edge of the table as he struggled to maintain his composure. Max didn't say anything more. He simply turned around and walked back to his mother, who was still absorbed in her meal, unaware of what had just transpired. Keanu couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had washed over him. He glanced at the boy again, his heart pounding. Was this just a strange coincidence, a random outburst, or was there something more to it? Without thinking, Keanu reached for his phone, his fingers trembling. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't ignore the overwhelming sense of urgency. There was something wrong. Something about this moment felt off in a way he couldn't explain. He unlocked the phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. "This is Keanu Reeves," he said, trying to sound calm, but his voice wavered. "I don't know what's happening, but I need help. Something's wrong. I'm in danger." The operator's voice came through, asking him to explain the situation, but Keanu couldn't fully articulate what had just occurred. All he knew was that this moment, this strange encounter with the boy, had sent a wave of fear through him, unlike anything he had ever experienced. And as he waited for the authorities to arrive, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to take a turn he never saw coming. The moments that followed felt like a blur. Keanu's hand shook as he held the phone to his ear, his mind still trying to process what had just happened. He could hear the calm voice of the 911 operator on the other end, but it seemed distant, almost too far away to register. "Sir, are you there? Please describe your location and the nature of the emergency." Keanu took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He was no stranger to chaos and unpredictability. He had been in action-packed movies, played characters under extreme duress, and faced life-or-death situations on screen. But this was different. This wasn't a scene from a script. This was real. The boy's words, so eerie and specific, rang through his mind again. "You're going to die today." Keanu tried to push the thought aside, but it wouldn't go away. The boy's face was still fresh in his mind, his voice still echoing in the air, cold and detached. For a moment, Keanu wondered if he had imagined it. Maybe it was just some weird coincidence, an unsettling moment that would fade away with time. But deep down, he knew it wasn't. I'm at the McDonald's on 5th and Pine," Keanu said, his voice finally regaining some steadiness. I think I'm in danger. A kid just told me I'm going to die today. He said it like it was a fact. I don't know what to do." The operator paused for a moment, likely processing the bizarre nature of the call. Then, in a calm, reassuring tone, she responded, "I understand, sir. Please stay where you are. We've dispatched officers to your location. Try to remain calm and stay on the line with me." Keanu barely heard her last words. His eyes had shifted back to the table where Max had been, now empty, as if the boy had never been there. His mother, Sarah, was sitting back down, enjoying her meal, completely unaware of the tension that had just transpired. The restaurant felt too quiet now, too still. The hum of the fryers, the buzz of the soda machine, the clink of trays, they all seemed distant, muted. All Keanu could hear was the rush of his own thoughts and the rising beat of his heart. A few minutes passed in an uncomfortable silence as Keanu sat back in his chair, his mind racing with questions. Was this just a prank? A bizarre moment of a child trying to get attention? Or was there something more to it? Something darker? He glanced around again, trying to gauge the reactions of the other patrons. Some were eating and chatting casually, others were distracted by their phones or talking to their families, but no one seemed to notice him. No one seemed to notice anything unusual about the moment. The normality of it all made him feel even more paranoid. He felt as though the walls were closing in on him. Then his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden movement. It was Sarah, the boy's mother. She was standing up now, gathering her things, ready to leave with Max. As she turned, Keanu couldn't help but notice the look on her face. It was a fleeting look, almost imperceptible, a flash of something. Cold? Maybe it was his imagination running wild, but for a split second, Sarah's expression didn't match the casual demeanor of a mother simply taking her child home. It was like she knew something that Keanu didn't. But before he could dwell on the thought, the door to McDonald's swung open again, and a pair of uniformed police officers entered. Keanu exhaled in relief, but the sense of unease in his stomach didn't go away. He stood up slowly, meeting the officers halfway. "Keanu Reeves," one of the officers asked, his voice calm but firm. "We received a call about a potential threat. Are you all right, sir?" Keanu nodded, though he felt far from all right. I don't know. A kid came up to me, said I was going to die today. I don't know if it's some kind of joke, but it felt real, like he knew something. I didn't know who else to call. I just felt like something was off." The officer nodded, glancing over at his partner. The two exchanged a brief, silent look before the second officer spoke up. "We're going to check the area, Mr. Reeves. You stay put, okay?" Keanu nodded, still feeling the weight of the bizarre encounter. The officers moved swiftly, canvassing the restaurant, checking the bathrooms, and scanning for anything out of the ordinary. Keanu watched them carefully, his eyes instinctively searching for Max and his mother. But they were gone. The boy and his mother had disappeared from the restaurant entirely, almost like they'd never been there at all. Gone. Keanu frowned, feeling the back of his neck prick with unease. He hadn't seen them leave. He hadn't heard the door open. One moment they were there, the next they weren't. He looked back at the officers, who were now speaking quietly to the employees behind the counter. It seemed like they were getting nowhere, just as Keanu was. "I didn't see them leave," Keanu said, stepping closer to one of the officers. "The mom and the boy, Max, they were just here. I swear they were just here. And now they're gone. What's going on?" The officer raised an eyebrow, glancing at his partner. "You're sure? We've checked the whole place. There's no sign of them." Keanu didn't know how to explain it. It felt like a nightmare. He could still see Max's face, hear the boy's chilling words, and yet there was no sign of them now. Nothing. I don't know what's happening. Something's wrong. It doesn't make sense." The officer nodded, a look of concern crossing his face. "We'll keep an eye on things here, Mr. Reeves. We'll review the security footage and see if we can find anything. In the meantime, if you feel like you're still in danger, don't hesitate to let us know." Keanu nodded absently, his mind spinning with questions. He knew the officers were just doing their job, but their casual approach to the situation only made him feel more unsettled. This wasn't just an ordinary encounter. Something was off. Something beyond explanation. And as the police continued their investigation, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was coming, whatever had just started, was far from over. The next few hours passed slowly, dragging on in an uncomfortable stillness. The police left soon after their brief investigation, assuring Keanu that they would follow up, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. No sign of the boy or his mother on the security cameras, no trace of anything unusual. It was as if Max and Sarah had never existed at all. Keanu's mind was spinning. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He tried to tell himself that it was just some weird coincidence, that the boy had maybe said something strange out of the blue. But the memory of Max's face, those eyes that seemed to see right through him, kept him on edge. Keanu found himself wandering the streets of the city later that evening, trying to clear his head. His phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking. The silence of his thoughts. He pulled it out, recognizing the number, his agent, Michael. "Keanu, hey, what's going on? We've been trying to get in touch with you." Michael's voice crackled over the line, frantic. "I don't know if you're aware, but there's something crazy happening online." Keanu frowned. "What do you mean?" "There's a rumor going around about you," Michael said, his tone more serious now. "It's all over the internet, some video or post, I don't know. People are saying you were involved in some bizarre incident at a McDonald's today." Keanu's heart skipped a beat. "What? That's impossible. I just had lunch there, man. Nothing happened." Michael hesitated before speaking again. "Keanu, it's everywhere. People are saying that there was a kid who came up to you and told you that you were going to die today. And now they're claiming that the kid has gone missing, that no one can find him or his mother. There's a lot of talk about it, man. People are freaking out. This is getting big." Keanu's mind raced. How could that be? He hadn't told anyone about the boy. Only the police had known. And yet, here was the rumor, spreading like wildfire. His grip tightened around the phone. "That's impossible. I don't know what's going on, but I swear to you, Michael, there's something strange about all of this. It's not just a rumor. I feel like I'm being followed. Something's wrong." Michael let out a deep sigh. Okay, take a breath, Keanu. I'll have someone look into this, but you've got to be careful. This could be a publicity stunt or someone messing with you. But if there's even the slightest chance that this kid, if there's something more to this, we need to figure it out fast. Don't let this consume you." Keanu didn't reply at first. His agent's words made sense, but they didn't take away the gnawing feeling in the pit of his stomach. He could still see Max's face in his mind, those unsettling, knowing eyes. He couldn't shake the feeling that something bad was coming, something he couldn't control. "I'll keep my head down," Keanu finally said, though he didn't believe it himself. "But Michael, I don't think this is over. Stay safe, Keanu. We'll be in touch." As the call ended, Keanu stood, frozen on the street corner, the hum of the city around him nothing more than a distant backdrop. He felt like he was trapped in a nightmare that he couldn't escape. The sense of foreboding hadn't left him, and now, with the rumors spreading, it was only growing stronger. Something was out of his control, and he had no idea what was coming next. Later that night, Keanu couldn't sleep. The feeling of unease settled deeper into his bones as the hours stretched on. He kept replaying the strange encounter over and over in his head. The boy's words, so eerily calm, the cold certainty in Max's voice. Keanu had never been one to believe in superstition, in fate, or in things that couldn't be explained. But this felt different. He was no longer sure what was real and what wasn't. The line between the ordinary and the extraordinary had blurred, and he had no idea how to separate them. At around 3 a.m., he finally gave in to the temptation to search the internet, though every fiber of his being told him not to. He opened his laptop and typed in Keanu Reeves McDonald's child into the search bar. What he found made his blood run cold. It was a video, a shaky recording of a man sitting alone in a McDonald's, surrounded by the usual lunchtime chaos. But the focus of the camera wasn't the surroundings. It was on a small boy. Max Keanu could barely breathe as he watched the video unfold. It showed the boy walking up to him, standing still, looking at him with that eerie intensity. The video was grainy, but there was no mistaking the child's face. It was him. Max then spoke. The same words, the same chilling tone. "You're going to die today." The video cut off immediately after the boy spoke, leaving the rest of the encounter undocumented. But the comments below the video were what shook Keanu the most. "Did anyone else see this? That kid was weird. I swear something's going on with him. Is this a joke? Is Keanu in on it? Is it just me, or does it seem like the kid knew something about Keanu?" There were hundreds of comments, speculating, guessing, and theorizing. Some people were even convinced it was some sort of viral stunt or prank. But there were others, like Keanu, who didn't know what to believe anymore. Something about this felt too real, too dangerous. He leaned back in his chair, his head spinning. He had never been one to worry about public perception or rumors, but this was different. This wasn't a typical tabloid scandal. This was something much darker, something much more insidious. As Keanu stared at the screen, his phone buzzed again. Another message, this one was from an unknown number. We're watching you, we know what's coming, it's not over. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. Who could be sending him these messages? Who was behind this? And what did they know? The weight of the threat, the heaviness of the situation was suffocating. He wasn't sure who he could trust anymore. All he knew was that Max's words had set something in motion, and now it was up to him to figure out just what. Something told him that if he didn't act quickly, things were going to get a lot worse. Keanu couldn't ignore it anymore. The sensation of being watched, of being followed, was growing stronger by the hour. It wasn't just the eerie messages or the whispers he'd seen online. It was more than that. It was a presence. Something, unseen, but undeniably there. The weight of it settled in his chest, heavy and unrelenting, and no matter where he went, he couldn't shake it. He had tried to dismiss it at first, but the more he thought about it, the more it all started to make sense. Max had been so certain, so cold when he spoke. He had known something, but what and why him? What was the connection between Keanu and the mysterious boy? Keanu couldn't rest. His mind kept returning to that moment in McDonald's, replaying it in an endless loop. The boy's words haunted him, his voice cutting through the air like an omen. You're going to die today. As he paced the floor of his apartment, Keanu's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone vibrating. His stomach clenched, but it wasn't an unknown number this time. It was Michael. Keanu, it's getting worse. The rumors are escalating, Michael said, his voice strained with tension. People are starting to ask questions, man. They're making the connection between the boy and the fact that you've been involved in some unexplained incidents recently. You've got to be careful. Keanu felt his heart sink. The rumors were no longer just idle chatter. They were escalating into something more dangerous. People were starting to believe that he was somehow involved in whatever was happening, maybe even the one responsible. I don't know how much. Longer I can keep this under control, Michael. I don't feel safe, Keanu admitted, his voice unsteady. That boy, Max, there's something about him. Something's not right. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever's happening, it's not just a coincidence. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice quieter, more serious. Keanu, there's something else. I've been hearing rumors about Max's mother, Sarah. She's been linked to some strange disappearances. They're saying she's been in and out of different cities, always with Max. And there's one thing that keeps coming up. No one's seen her for years. It's like she's vanished. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. He had no idea what Michael was talking about. Disappearances? Missing persons? This was something entirely different from what he had originally thought. No one has seen her. What are you saying, Michael? Keanu demanded, feeling his anxiety surge. I'm not sure yet, but there's a pattern. And I don't think this is just about some random kid. If Max is involved in this, if there's something about him that we don't understand, it's bigger than just a prank. This could be something dangerous, something that's been going on for much longer than we thought. Keanu's mind raced. This couldn't just be a coincidence. His thoughts flickered back to that chilling moment when Max had whispered his cryptic message, the boy's certainty, his cold eyes, and the unsettling feeling that something was coming, something far beyond their control. It was as though Max was a messenger of something, an event that had already been set into motion. I need to know more about Sarah, Keanu said, a new determination filling his voice. Where do I start? Michael paused. I'll look into it, but you need to lay low for a bit. Don't make any public appearances. Let's get the full picture before we take any action. Keanu hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, his mind whirling with everything he had just learned. This was bigger than just some strange encounter in McDonald's. It was a puzzle, a dark web of mystery that stretched far beyond anything he could have imagined. The next few days blurred together. Keanu avoided the press and stayed holed up in his apartment, but the fear didn't subside. If anything, it grew. He felt eyes on him constantly, and the strange messages kept coming, each more cryptic and unsettling than the last. They came from unknown numbers, sometimes just a simple sentence. We're watching. It's not over. You're running out of time. Every message felt like a countdown, like a clock ticking away towards something he couldn't see, couldn't understand. and in the back of his mind that voice kept repeating, "You're going to die today." Keanu's thoughts were spiraling. Who was sending these messages, and what did they want from him? He could feel the pull of this mystery, drawing him in deeper, despite the fear that gripped his chest. But he had no choice. He had to find answers. He needed to understand why Max had singled him out, why he was at the center of this inexplicable web. One evening, Keanu received an encrypted email. His hands shook as he opened it, his heart pounding in his chest. The message was short, but chilling. "Meet me where it all began." It was unsigned, no sender, no indication of who had sent it, but Keanu knew exactly where it was referring to: the McDonald's. With his heart racing, he grabbed his jacket and rushed out the door. He couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting was his only chance to uncover the truth. He had to find out who was behind all of this before it was too late. The McDonald's was eerily quiet when Keanu arrived. It was late, and only a few scattered customers sat at tables, but the place felt different now. The air was thick with tension, and Keanu could almost feel the weight of what had happened here pressing down on him. He approached the counter, his eyes scanning the room for any sign of who might be waiting for him, and then he saw her, Sarah, Max's mother. She was sitting at a booth alone, her eyes fixed on Keanu as if she had been expecting him. Her presence sent a chill down his spine. She was calm, almost unnervingly so, but there was something about her that felt off. Something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Keanu's heart raced as he walked toward her, unsure of what to expect. He felt like he was stepping into a trap, but he had no other choice. He had to confront her. "Sarah." Keanu's voice was low, careful. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "Keanu," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "I knew you'd come. It was only a matter of time." Keanu took a seat across from her, his mind racing. "What is going on? What's the connection between you and your son? What do you know about all of this?" She smiled faintly, but it was a smile that sent a shiver down his spine. "You're in deeper than you realize. Max was only the beginning. There are things in motion that you'll never understand, Keanu, but you're part of it now. You can't escape." Keanu's pulse quickened. The walls of the restaurant seemed to close in on him, and the world outside felt like it was slipping away. "What do you want from me?" he demanded, his voice growing more urgent. "What is it that you want me to do?" Sarah leaned forward, her eyes locking with his. "You can't run from what's coming. You're already marked. There's nothing you can do to stop it. The game has already begun, and there's no turning back." Keanu's blood ran cold. He had no idea what he had just stepped into, but one thing was clear. Whatever Sarah and Max were involved in, it was much bigger, much darker than anything he could have imagined. And now there was no way out. Keanu's mind was spinning as Sarah's cryptic words echoed in his head. He couldn't wrap his mind around what she was saying. "You're already marked. There's nothing you can do to stop it." The calmness in her voice as she spoke about something that sounded like a cosmic force, an unrelenting power, made his stomach churn. Was she delusional? Or was there something darker at play here, something he couldn't see? He leaned back in his seat, trying to steady his breathing. His hands were shaking, but he clenched them into fists to try to maintain control. "Marked for what? What is this all about? Who are you?" Sarah's gaze softened, as if she was considering how much to tell him. "It's bigger than you, Keanu, bigger than both of us. But you're in this now, whether you like it or not. Max, he's not just a boy. He's a part of something ancient, something that's been unfolding for years, and you've unwittingly become a part of it." Keanu's heart raced, his breath quickened. This felt like a nightmare, an insane, terrifying nightmare that he couldn't wake up from. "I don't understand," he said, his voice growing more desperate. "What is Max, then? Why me?" Sarah didn't answer right away. She let the silence hang in the air, thick and oppressive. The soft hum of the restaurant felt distant, like an unsettling reminder that the world outside this booth was continuing as usual, indifferent to the chaos Keanu was being dragged into. Finally, Sarah spoke again, but her voice was lower now, almost reverent. "Max is the key. He's the one who sees things others can't. And you, Keanu, you're in his path. That's why he came to you, why he spoke to you in the way he did. Keanu's pulse thudded in his ears. The key. To what? Sarah's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Keanu thought he saw something flicker in her expression, something almost like regret. But it passed quickly, replaced by that same chilling calmness. The key to what's been set in motion. Max can see beyond this world, Keanu. He sees the strings that bind us all, but more than that, he can change them. And you're part of that change, whether you're ready or not. Keanu felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. This didn't make sense. None of it did. The idea that a child, Max, this mysterious boy, could see things no one else could, let alone change things, was beyond comprehension. But the look in Sarah's eyes, the urgency in her voice, told him she wasn't lying.
"But why me? Why are you telling me all of this?" Keanu demanded, his voice thick with confusion and fear. "Why did Max come to me?" Sarah stood up from the booth slowly, as though the weight of their conversation was too much to carry, sitting down. She walked over to the window, looking out at the city street below. Her back was to him, but Keanu could feel the heaviness of her words hanging in the air like an oppressive storm cloud. "Max is only one part of the puzzle. But you, Keanu." She turned to face him, her eyes dark and unreadable. "You've been living a lie. You think this is all just a random series of events, but it's not. It's been leading you here, leading you to this moment. You're part of something much bigger than you ever realized. Something that started long before you were born." Keanu's chest tightened. The words felt suffocating. His head was spinning with all the implications of what she was saying, but nothing made sense. How was he part of something bigger? Why had this been thrust upon him now at this point in his life? Was this some kind of elaborate hoax, or was something truly supernatural at play? "I don't believe you," he said, more out of desperation than certainty. "You're saying that I'm part of some cosmic plan? That I'm part of some ancient prophecy, or whatever you want to call it? This is insane." Sarah's face softened slightly, as if she understood his disbelief. "I wish I could explain it all to you, Keanu. I wish I could make you understand. But the truth is, you're not ready. No one is. Max is the catalyst, but you're the one who will decide how this ends." Keanu stood up suddenly, his mind racing. "No, I won't be a part of this. I don't want any part of whatever this is. I didn't ask for this. I just want it to stop. I want it to end." Sarah's eyes flashed with something that resembled sadness but also a hint of pity. "You can't escape, Keanu. It's already too late. There's no running from this." As her words sunk in, Keanu felt a cold chill run through his body. It was like the room had dropped in temperature, and the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the suffocating feeling of inevitability. There was no escaping this. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number again, but this time Keanu didn't hesitate. He picked it up, pressing it to his ear. "Keanu," a voice on the other end said, low and urgent. It was Michael. "I've got something. You need to get out of there now." "What's going on?" Keanu asked, his pulse racing. "There's a man connected to Sarah. We've traced some of the disappearances to him. He's dangerous. You're not safe. You need to leave, Keanu. Now." Keanu's heart skipped a beat. "Who is he? What does he want?" "I don't have all the details yet, but it's bad, Keanu. He's been looking for you. We're trying to track him down, but he's part of this thing too. It's all connected. Just get out of there. I'll call you when I know more." Before Keanu could respond, the line went dead. A new wave of fear washed over him. This wasn't just about Max and Sarah anymore. There was someone else, someone who had been hunting him, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment had come. He looked back at Sarah, who was now standing by the door, watching him with a calm, almost pitying gaze. "You need to leave. It's not safe," she said quietly, almost as if she was warning him. "But remember this. You can't change what's coming. You can only decide how you face it." Keanu's thoughts were a blur. He didn't have time for any more cryptic messages. He turned and ran, bursting out the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed answers. He needed to understand what had just been unleashed, and more importantly, he needed to find a way to stop it before it was too late, as he ran into the night. The streets of the city seemed to stretch out before him like a labyrinth. But no matter how fast he moved, the sense of something chasing him, something just out of reach, gnawed at him. There was no escaping this nightmare. Whatever was coming, Keanu was now trapped in its web. And there was no way out. The city seemed alive in a way that unsettled Keanu as he ran through its darkened streets. Every step felt like it echoed too loudly, drawing attention to his every move, as though unseen eyes were watching from every corner. His heart pounded, both from the sheer panic of the moment and from the gnawing uncertainty that had taken hold of him. The world around him was too quiet, unnaturally so, and it made him feel like he was racing against something far more dangerous than he could comprehend. "What's happening, Michael? I can't stay here. They're after me." "Keanu, listen to me," Michael's voice crackled on the other end. "You need to meet me, now. I know where they're taking you. They're not just after you, they're after Max, and you're the key to finding him." "Max?" Keanu said, confused. "I thought I was the one they wanted, the one they were hunting. You said it's connected to Sarah." "It is," Michael confirmed, his voice low. "But there's more to this. Sarah isn't just some woman with a strange son. She's part of something much older, something that's been manipulating events for years. And it's all leading to you, Keanu, and Max." Keanu's mind spun. The more Michael spoke, the deeper the hole seemed to get. There was no escaping it, no way to distance himself from this surreal nightmare. But the question remained, why him? Why Max? "Where do I meet you?" Keanu asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's a place, a warehouse near the docks." "It's the last place they'll expect you to go," Michael said quickly. "But you have to hurry. You're running out of time." Keanu didn't hesitate. His legs moved faster, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he made his way through the unfamiliar streets. He didn't know what he was walking into, but he didn't have much of a choice. The answers, if they existed, were at that warehouse, Keanu reached the outskirts of the city. The industrial district loomed ahead. The sound of distant waves crashing against the shore mixed with the faint hum of machinery. The area was dark, desolate. The streets were abandoned, save for a few stray dogs and the occasional rat scurrying across the pavement. It felt like a place forgotten by time, where secrets were buried in the shadows. He turned into an alleyway, his eyes scanning every corner as he approached the warehouse. It was an old building, rusted and decrepit, its metal walls covered in graffiti and layers of grime. It looked abandoned, but Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting inside, something far more dangerous than he could imagine. He entered cautiously, his senses heightened. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence. The crunch of his boots on gravel, the wind whistling through broken windows, the distant clang of metal. The warehouse smelled of rust and decay, the air thick with dust. His heart raced as he moved further in, unsure of what he was about to face. Michael had warned him, but the truth was that Keanu didn't know what to expect. Was it another trap? Or was this where the answers would finally reveal themselves He reached the center of the warehouse. He saw a flickering light in the distance. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting long shadows on the walls. In the dim glow, he saw figures moving, shadowy outlines in the dark. Keanu froze. His instincts screamed at him to turn around, to flee, but he couldn't. Not now, not when he was so close. "Keanu," a voice whispered from the darkness. It was Michael's voice, but it sounded different, distorted, as if it were coming from somewhere far away. "Michael," Keanu called out, his voice trembling. "Where are you?" The figure stepped into the light, but it wasn't Michael. It was a man, tall, with hollow eyes and a cold, empty expression. His clothes were dark, and his face was obscured by shadows, but Keanu could feel the intensity of his gaze, like something predatory watching its prey. Keanu took a step back, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone, but before he could react, the man spoke again, his voice a low growl. "You're too late." Keanu's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? Where's Michael?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, closing the distance between them with unnerving speed. "You shouldn't have come. You don't belong here." A cold sweat broke out across Keanu's forehead as the man's words sank in. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was part of something far darker, and whatever had been set in motion was now coming to a head. Suddenly, the warehouse door slammed shut behind him, sending a jolt of panic through Keanu. He spun around, looking for an escape, but there was none. He was trapped. And that was when he heard the voice. The voice he had been dreading since the very beginning. "Keanu." It was soft at first, almost like a whisper carried on the wind, but it grew louder. Familiar. Too familiar. "Keanu, I've been waiting for you." Max. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. He spun around, his eyes scanning the darkness for the source of the voice, and then he saw him. Max, standing there in the shadows, his small figure silhouetted. By the dim light, Max stepped forward, his expression impossibly calm. His eyes locked with Keanu's, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. The boy's gaze was intense, unnerving, as if he could see through Keanu, into his very soul. "You shouldn't have come here, Keanu," Max said, his voice like ice. "This is where it all ends." Keanu's blood ran cold. What did he mean? What was happening? Max didn't wait for a response. Instead, he raised his hand, and the world around Keanu seemed to twist. The shadows deepened, the light flickered, and Keanu could feel the air growing thick with something unnatural. Before he could react, everything went dark. When Keanu regained consciousness, the world was quiet. Too quiet. The air was still, heavy, almost suffocating. His head throbbed with pain, and as he opened his eyes, he realized he was no longer in the warehouse. He was somewhere else, somewhere far darker. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with symbols and strange markings Keanu didn't recognize. The ground beneath him was cold, and as he tried to move, he realized his hands were bound. He tried to sit up, panic surging through him. What happened? How had he ended up here? And then from the shadows he heard that same voice. "It's too late now, Keanu. The game is over." Max stepped into view. His small figure seemed to glow in the dim light, his eyes full of knowledge. Knowledge that Keanu didn't understand but knew he couldn't ignore. "Max," Keanu whispered, his voice hoarse. "What is this? What do you want from me?" Max didn't answer. He simply smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "You've already lost." The room began to spin, and Keanu felt himself sinking into darkness once. More, the weight of those words pressing down on him like a stone. It was over. But Keanu refused to accept it. He wasn't done yet. He wouldn't be. Not yet. Not without understanding what Max truly was, and what was coming for them all. Keanu's world was spinning as the darkness closed in around him. He could feel the coldness of the concrete beneath. Him, the tightness of the ropes around his wrists. His body ached, but his mind screamed for clarity. He couldn't allow himself to slip back into unconsciousness. Not now. Not with everything on the line, Max's cryptic words echoed in his ears. You've already lost. But Keanu wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't. Not when he was so close. There was still too much left unanswered. What had Sarah meant by being marked? Why was Max so important? And why had everything led him to this moment, this nightmare that seemed to stretch on endlessly? His eyes flickered open once more, but the shadows seemed to grow thicker, colder. The room felt ancient, far older than anything he had ever seen. The strange markings on the walls pulsed faintly, glowing in an eerie light. They seemed to move in rhythm with his heartbeat, as though the walls themselves were alive. Keanu tried to calm his breathing. He needed to think. Focus, Keanu. Think. He jerked his wrists against the ropes, trying to loosen them, but the binding was tight. Too tight. Panic began to claw at him again, but he forced it down. No. I won't panic. I can't. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the stillness. Slow. Deliberate. It was a heavy presence, a sense of inevitability creeping closer with each step. Keanu's heart raced. He wasn't alone anymore. The footsteps stopped. He held his breath, trying to make sense of what was happening. The air grew colder. The silence between them stretched, unbearable. Then, the voice broke through the stillness, soft, almost tender, but filled with an undeniable power. Keanu, Max whispered, his voice unnervingly close now. Keanu flinched but didn't dare look up. I told you, you've already lost. You can't change what's coming. You can't change what's been written. Keanu's chest tightened. He wasn't ready to believe it. He wouldn't let Max dictate the end of his story. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be something he was missing. Max, Keanu breathed, his voice shaky but steady. Why are you doing this? Why me? What do you want? The small figure of Max materialized from the shadows, his face too calm, too knowing. The boy's eyes were impossibly dark, the light around him dimming as he approached. You're part of the cycle, Keanu, Max said, his voice carrying a weight that pressed down on Keanu like a 1,000-pound stone. You've always been. The moment you crossed paths with me at McDonald's, it set everything in motion. You can't stop it. You can't fight it. Keanu's pulse quickened. He couldn't understand how this child, this boy, could hold so much power, so much knowledge. What kind of world was he caught in? And why was Max the key? Why was it all coming to a head now? I don't believe you, Keanu snapped, trying to break the tension, to fight back the fear that was creeping into his bones. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't choose this. If it's true, then why are you telling me now? Max tilted his head, studying him with a gaze that felt older than anything Keanu had ever experienced. Because you're already part of it. You don't have a choice. You never did. A chill ran down Keanu's spine, but he pushed it down. He had to keep it together. This wasn't over. Not yet. You can't stop what's coming, but you can control how you face it. Max's words were sharp, final. He took a step forward, and for the first time, Keanu felt a shift in the air. A presence, invisible but undeniable, seemed to wash over him. Keanu's breath hitched. It felt like the very walls were closing in on him.
Max's smile grew, faint but knowing. You see, you're not just caught in a web of fate. You're part of the weaver's hands, the strands of time, the threads of the universe. Keanu shook his head, his mind racing. What does that mean? What do you want from me? Max's smile faded slightly, and for a moment, there was something almost sad in his expression. I don't want anything from you, Keanu. This is bigger than me. Bigger than you. But you're the one who will decide how it ends. The room seemed to darken even more, the weight of Max's words sinking in deeper. Keanu wasn't just facing some child with strange abilities. He was facing a force, something beyond human comprehension. But Max wasn't just a tool of fate. He was something else entirely. Keanu's mind spun with the realization. It's not just about Max. It's about me. I'm part of this cycle, this thing that's been unfolding for years. Max's eyes narrowed as though he was reading Keanu's thoughts. You finally understand, don't you? You're connected to it. This has been set in motion for generations. This isn't just about the present. It's about the past, the future. You are the key. You are the fulcrum that will determine which way the scale tips. Keanu's heart pounded as a wave of realization washed over him. The past, the future, all of it was tied together. Everything in his life, everything that had happened. Had it all led him to this moment? Was this the reason he had been thrust into this bizarre, terrifying situation? Because of some grand design, some cosmic plan. Max took another step closer, his presence overwhelming. You are not who you think you are, Keanu. You are more than you've ever known, and now you have a choice. Keanu blinked, trying to clear his head, but it felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. A choice? What kind of choice could he make when the stakes were so high, when it felt like everything had already been decided for him? Choose, Max said softly, his voice almost a whisper. You can choose to embrace it, or you can fight it. Either way, it's coming. Keanu swallowed hard, trying to wrap his mind around it all. He had no answers, no clue what to do. He had no choice but to make a decision, one that would determine not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of the world itself. Max stepped back into the shadows, his form disappearing as if he was never really there. Keanu was alone again, left, with his thoughts, the weight of what Max had said pressing on him like an iron chain. He had to act, but how? How could he even begin to understand what was truly happening? The walls seemed to close in further. There was only one thing Keanu knew for sure. Whatever choice he made, it would not only change his life forever, but it would shape the future in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. With a deep breath, Keanu stood up, his legs trembling from the effort. He couldn't stay here. He couldn't stay trapped in this nightmare. He had to find a way out. He had to find a way to stop whatever was coming, whatever Max was. But before he could take another step, the door creaked open, and a figure stepped. Inside, blocking his path, it was Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something like fear. Keanu, you have to listen to me. They're coming for you. It's worse than I thought. You have no time. Keanu's stomach twisted. Who was coming? And what had Sarah meant by worse than she thought? I'm not sure I can protect you anymore, she whispered, her voice cracking with desperation. But there's still a way to stop it. You have to trust me. Keanu's heart raced. He had no choice but to trust her. He had nothing left. I'll do whatever it takes, he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. Sarah nodded, her gaze shifting to the shadows where Max had disappeared. We're running out of time, she said softly. And this time, there may not be a way back. The room was suffocating in its stillness, every breath Keanu took feeling heavier than the last. Sarah's warning hung in the air like a shadow waiting to pounce. She was right. Time was running. Out. He could feel it in his bones like the slow but inevitable march of something terrible just around the corner. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that was yet to come, seemed to press down on him all at once. Keanu stared at Sarah, trying to piece together the fragments of information she had just dropped. It's worse than I thought. What did she mean by that? And why was she so sure that they were running out of time? I don't understand, he said, his voice thick with confusion. What's coming for me? What do you know that I don't? Sarah closed her eyes, her face a mask of sorrow. Keanu, you've always been part of this cycle, this world. You're connected to it more than you realize. You're not just caught up in a random event. You were chosen, long before any of this started. Keanu's heart clenched, the words feeling like a blow to his chest. Chosen for what? Sarah took a deep breath, like she was steeling herself for what she was about to say. To be a key, to break the cycle, or to become its ruler. She paused, locking eyes with him. But the truth is, Keanu, the choice you make now, this choice, is the one that will determine everything. Keanu's pulse quickened. A key, to break the cycle, or become its ruler. These were things he couldn't even begin to wrap his mind around. What kind of cycle was she talking about? What was the choice he had to make? Max's words haunted him, more chilling now than before. You've already lost. But could it be true? Could this really be the end? Or was it just the beginning of something even darker? Sarah, Keanu said, his voice trembling but firm. Tell me what to do. How do I stop this? How do I stop Max? Sarah shook her head, slowly, her expression unreadable. You can't just stop him, Keanu. You're not dealing with something as simple as a villain. Max isn't just a boy. He's an agent of something much older, something beyond comprehension. He's part of this larger force, a force that's been shaping the world for centuries. And you're the one who can either break it or become a part of it. The gravity of her words hit him like a ton of bricks. A larger force, something that had been shaping the world for centuries. What kind of world had he stumbled into? And how could he, someone just trying to live his life, possibly be involved in something so cosmic? Tell me what I need to do, Keanu demanded, his voice hardening, a steely resolve building within him despite the terror that threatened to overwhelm him. I don't care about the forces or cycles. I just want to protect the people I care about. I want to save Max from whatever he's become. Sarah's eyes softened for a moment, but there was no warmth in them, only a deep, aching sadness. You're not the one who can save Max, Keanu. He's gone lost to something darker. The only thing left is what you do next. Keanu took a step forward, his fists clenched. Then tell me what happens if I make the wrong choice. If you make the wrong choice, Sarah said quietly, you'll become a part of it. You'll join the cycle. You'll take Max's place. She paused. And the world will never be the same. You'll be trapped in this never-ending loop, a puppet of fate forever, just like Max. The words hung in the air, a cold wind blowing through Keanu's chest. Take Max's place? What did that even mean? Max had been trapped in this force, but how could Keanu ever become like him? Was there any way to break free from this nightmare? Keanu closed his eyes, trying to steady himself. His heart pounded in his ears, and his thoughts swirled like a storm. He wanted to scream, to demand answers that made sense, but the truth was, there were no easy answers. He could feel the weight of the choice pressing on him, one single decision that could change everything. Suddenly, the room seemed to shift, the air growing thick with a palpable sense of dread. Keanu felt a presence behind him, cold and powerful, like the shadow of something ancient watching him. He didn't have to turn around to know that Max was there, that he was close. He could feel the boy's presence like a storm on the horizon, ready to consume everything in its path. Keanu, Max's voice came from the darkness, sharp and clear. You've been given the chance to make the right decision, but you're running out of time. Keanu's breath caught in his throat as he turned to face the boy, his heart hammering in his chest. Max was standing just beyond the shadows, his dark eyes fixed on Keanu with an eerie intensity. What are you? Keanu asked, his voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from me? Max stepped forward, his small figure now fully visible in the dim light. His face was calm, almost serene, but his eyes held an unsettling depth, as though he had seen and understood things that no one should ever have to witness. I don't want anything from you, Keanu, Max said softly, his voice strange, too, calm for someone his age. But I can't let you stop what's been set in motion. You're part of this, just like me. Keanu's pulse quickened, and his stomach tightened with dread. Part of this? What was he talking about? You don't understand, Max continued, his gaze locking onto Keanu's with an almost knowing expression. You're the only one who can decide what happens next, whether you break the cycle or take my place. But the question is, can you make the right choice, Keanu? Can you? Keanu's mind whirled with 1,000 questions, but the most pressing one remained. What was the right choice? How could he even begin to know what the right choice was when everything felt so broken, so twisted? For the first time, Keanu felt a sense of finality, as though there were no more time for second guesses. There was no turning back now. The weight of the decision pressed down on him like a 1,000-pound boulder, but he knew he had to act. He couldn't let Max win. He couldn't let the cycle continue. Not if it meant the world would be trapped in darkness forever. Max's voice cut through his thoughts again. Time's up, Keanu. Choose. Keanu took a deep breath, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He glanced at Sarah, who was standing silently behind him, her expression unreadable. She had warned him, but it was up to him now. He had to make the choice, break the cycle, or become part of it. The future of everything, his world, the world of those he loved, rested in his hands. Keanu's gaze hardened, his decision clear. "I choose to end it," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else, and with that the world seemed to shift.